Welcome, Spurs fans, to another edition of Casa De Spurs. I am your host, Trace, with co-host Steven and special guest. You may know him from Twitter, FiveThirtyEight, CBS Sports, or last night in basketball, we have Jared Dubin joining us on the show. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so Jared, you wrote an article on FiveThirtyEight back in January called "The Spurs Young Trio Has Them Back in the Mix." I was excited to see that because I like the idea of the Spurs being back in the mix. But I had a big question actually is when I was reading the article, you were talking about how Lonnie, DeJounte, and Keldon are like the young trio. I'm wondering maybe why you left Derek out of that, or is it because he's old?
No, it's because he was injured at the time, and I think he had played like 2 games at the time that I was working on it. He wasn't playing obviously early in the year, and then he came back and got injured again right away. So the idea was basically that the young guys had been driving a lot of their success so far this season, and Derek White hadn't been part of that because he hadn't been playing. So, I mean, if he had been playing, then he would have been involved, but he wasn't. So he wasn't.
Okay.
That's good to know. That's comforting. Hey, I'm a little curious here, Jared. So we hear a term that floats around. I guess all fan bases use it, but it's fairly new to the San Antonio Spurs and our fan base. But we hear this term called positionless basketball. Of course, we argue over Tim Duncan. He's the greatest power forward of all time, right? But now you've got like this core of young players, including the 3 that kind of you wrote about, but even the ones that are starting to come back. Derek White, we've had Devin Vassell, who's here now. These guys are all kind of playing the same position. I mean, I guess from an outsider's perspective, what could you maybe say to Spurs fans about what it's like to have a nucleus of young players, but maybe they all play the same position? Like, is this kind of like leading up to like, well, at some point there's going to be an odd man out, and you might have to, flip this guy for a true wing or maybe a more traditional big? Or is it kind of okay that you've got a plethora of young guards that kind of are all in that same spot?
Yeah, I mean, so this gets into kind of one of the things that I haven't really written about it yet, but it's kind of been like pinging around in my head. It's just like the most important thing in the league right now to me is wing depth. And if you're going to build around guys that play the same position, I think it should be wings. And the Spurs they're pretty deep on the wing. I don't know that everybody necessarily plays the same position. Like, I think that it's pretty clear that DeJounte Murray and Derek White are more, lead ball handlers than Lonnie Walker or Devin Vassell or even Keldon Johnson. I think that the wings are more Lonnie and Vassell and Johnson, and I think you can throw DeRozan in there too. Those guys are all like 2, 3, 4 types. I don't know if you can play Lonnie at the 4, but they're more like 2 3s or 3 4s, whereas Murray and White are more 1 2s. So you got a little bit of a mix there. And I think the thing that they're kind of missing is the guys that are like the 4 or 5 types. And that was sort of something that I touched on in the piece too, where, a lot of what's dragged the performance of the younger guys down this year is the minutes that they've been playing with LaMarcus Aldridge, who just has not been good,
Drink.
I wrote about it earlier last season, where, I think a couple seasons ago, he was still acceptable defensively. The start of last year, I think, since then, it's been pretty bad. And I think that's shown through, especially when they play with the young guys, because like DeJounte obviously is really good on defense. Lonnie has the capability to be good on defense. Vassell like teleports in and out of passing lanes. It's completely ridiculous. But they're not 100% solid yet and don't 100% know what they're doing yet. So to have a guy on the back line who can't clean everything up is an issue. And I think that's why you see that they've played better, with Poetl on the back line, I think, defensively. And, their scoring margins, offense, defense, whatever you want to call it, have just not been as good with LaMarcus on the court. And that was kind of, another piece of the story that I wrote. And so I do think they need that 4-5 type to sort of round out the core.
Yeah, we're big believers in LaMarcus Aldridge not being a Spur after this season. I don't know that it's hard to find a home for him this year. I don't think he's we've kind of been feeling he hasn't played well enough to like warrant any team trading for him. But
No.
yeah, Spurs Twitter, if you ever find yourself just in need of a laugh, you should just pour through the people that are thinking that LaMarcus Aldridge is going to like, we should just trade him to Orlando for a first round pick. And you're like, but what? First of all, why?
Why would Orlando do such a thing?
Yeah.
That would be something like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't think you can come close to that now.
No, I think you're playing that out and just seeing what happens in the offseason at that position. Yeah. I'm also like, I'd love to hear what you think about this, because I absolutely love DeMar DeRozan as a Spur. I didn't expect this, but I think he has been probably really instrumental in some of the success of the young guys. I've been reading a lot about how him and Keldon Johnson have a great rapport. He's taught them a lot about how to play the sport and as a pro. And I know, sometimes when you look at these numbers, it looks like the Spurs maybe are better when DeRozan isn't on the court. But I think maybe that's just looking too deep into plus minus, because I think they get beat before the
I think if you just look at the DeRozan numbers without Aldridge, you'll see what's going on there.
Yeah. Exactly. I think, yeah, when you look at those two, it's easy to say, oh, the old guys are the problem, but it's really LaMarcus that's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of sucky to just say that, but the numbers tell a pretty clear story. I think at least this year, it wasn't quite as drastic last season. They also weren't playing the young guys together as much last season. Weren't playing a lot of the young guys that much at all. I think I wrote about it in the story. Keldon played like 90 minutes or something before the bubble, so he didn't really play much at all. Lonnie was in and out of the rotation. DeJounte was playing like 24 minutes a game, something like that. Yeah. So those guys just were not responsible for doing as much, and obviously were not driving as much of the team's success. So I think, last year you couldn't say it's clearly this that's happening, whereas this year I think it paints a much clearer picture. And I don't think it's that much of a coincidence that they played pretty well when he was out and they were starting Poeltl at center. Yeah.
And LaMarcus, the last 2 games has come off the bench, which I don't think he's done since maybe his rookie year. It's kind of crazy.
He actually looks great off the bench. That's great.
Go ahead, Steven. Did you want to continue on that?
I was just going to say, I think he looks great in the second unit. I don't know if that's something that he's willing to commit to, but I remember when they played against the Oklahoma City Thunder the other night. I mean, he was working Roby down on the block. I think Roby got like 3 or 4 straight fouls on him, and that's kind of what you're hoping for, is to get like LaMarcus Aldridge guarding some second or third year player off the bench that he can mid-range him to death and like let him maybe stretch out a little bit. And I think that's a great role for him. I don't know that LaMarcus Aldridge wants to play that role. And I certainly don't know if he just wants to ride it out in San Antonio and be like, oh yeah, you guys can go ahead and start Jakob now, and I'll just stay back here and play against the Robies of the world and just go from there. But it's really hard to justify playing him over Jakob Poetl in any meaningful minute right now.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't caught either of the last 2 games, so I haven't seen what he's done off the bench. But I do think that is, as big men get older, I think that a lot of them have found that playing against second units and sort of running the second unit offense through them is something that works really well, especially big men that are, post-up guys. Like LaMarcus, post him on that left block, and he's very comfortable down there. Yep. And I think you've seen that. Like, I'm not making a direct comparison here, but like, for example, like a guy like Enes Kanter, when he comes off the bench for Portland, or he did it in Boston, like he just brutalizes these bench big guys because they can't handle him. And like, I very easily see LaMarcus having success doing that. It's just much more difficult when you're trying to post Al Horford than when you're trying to post Isaiah Roby.
Yeah, exactly. Can you maybe talk, Jared, about also this? I don't know what we'd call it, but there's this narrative that exists that as long as DeMar DeRozan is on this team, whether that's for the next couple of weeks and he's moved at the deadline, or maybe even down the road, he's taking minutes away from these guys and preventing them from reaching the ceiling. I think Trace just kind of talked about it. Like DeMar is a good guy. If you're gonna have that many young guards, wings, whatever you want to call them, it's kind of nice to have a DeMar DeRozan there to kind of show them how the ropes are. And I think there's value to that. He's listed as one of the top 10 available free agents coming up this summer. The Spurs have the ability to sign him. They're sitting, he's sitting right on their roster right now. They're going to have the cap space to sign him. I feel like I'm running out of reasons to not sign DeMar DeRozan other than this nonsense that he's taking minutes from guys and he doesn't play defense. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. So I think you could have made a much better case that he was like taking minutes that should go to other people because he's not playing well enough to justify him. I think you could have made a much better case 2 years ago in his first season in San Antonio. I don't think you can make that case now. He's playing unbelievably well. He's not using as many possessions as he did in the past, and the possessions that he is using, he's using in different ways. He's at I'm pretty sure he's a career high in assists this year. He's at 7 assists a game.
Yeah.
He's not taking as many shots. He's still getting to the line as much as he ever did. He's playing really well. He's been their best player this year. I think it's pretty clear. I wouldn't have been surprised if the NBA a lot of times will just take the guy with the next most votes for the All-Star game, but sometimes they'll do if a forward is out, they'll take a forward as a replacement. I'm pretty confident that if Anthony Davis' replacement had been a forward, it would have been DeRozan. He's playing really well. I don't think you can say that they can't have him out there or he's taking minutes from anybody. He's playing 30-something minutes a game, but, Lonnie, Keldon, DeJounte, those guys are all playing around 30 or more than 30 minutes a game. Devin Bell isn't, but the Spurs always bring rookies along slow. He's playing more than any Spurs rookie in years. Derek White's played 6-7 games. Who's he taking minutes from? Trey Lyles?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
I don't think a rookie has played more than Devin Vassell since Tony Parker. I don't have
anyone.
Yeah. Speaking of point guards in San Antonio, I would love to talk a little bit more about DeJounte Murray because Steven and I have egg all over our faces. Before this season, we had a big discussion about whether or not he was actually going to be the point guard of the future. He hadn't looked great in since coming off the ACL injury, but
biggest L we've ever had.
Really made us eat that this season. And I thought, at the beginning of the season, I thought if he bounces back, his ceiling might be an all-NBA defensive team this year. The way he's playing this year, do you think he could maybe even make an all-NBA team?
No, I don't think you're going to have him be one of the 6 best guards in the NBA. It's just there's not enough spots on an all-NBA team for him. But he's really good. And look, last year was his first year back from the ACL, and I don't know that he played more than 25 minutes a game, but he was, what was he like?
Yeah,
11 minutes. 5 or whatever it was last year. That's pretty good production. And his defense wasn't what it was when he was a first team all defense guy in, what was it, 17, 18 or 16, 17, whatever it was. I don't even know what year.
17.
But,
17.
I think that he's pretty well back on that end now. He's still 24. He's, I think, now getting into more of a rhythm shooting off the dribble and, a little bit more of a rhythm shooting from 3. He's still not going to take a ton of them, but what he was taking before, where it was 1 a game, was just not acceptable for a lead ball handler in today's NBA. But now he's getting 3 of them up a game and not hitting them all that well yet. But the first step is being willing to take them, and then you get into actually shooting them well. So, I've always been a big fan. I think I had him on first team all defense. Not that my votes counted. In but he was just that good, and people were like, "How? He only plays 20 minutes a game." Just watch.
Yeah, he's everywhere, man.
Player, a guy that big, that long, who moves the way he does. I really, really like him.
Steven and I have talked about I don't know if he stole this move from Kawhi or whatever, but I think he's gotten just as good at Kawhi as at getting the guy at the top of the arc and picking his pocket and taking him the other way.
Yeah, I mean, well, he's just got those arms are like, you know, they could reach from me to you right now. Like, it's I would say the Spurs definitely have a type in that sense, just the length that so many of these guys have. Vassell is the same way. I mean, he's less like just reaching in and more like off the ball. It seems like he's like teleporting. It's and it physically pains me to say nice things about someone that went to Florida State, but I think he's going to be quite a good defender. I'm not quite as sure about where the offense comes from if it's not being created for him, but if you're that good on defense, that doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, and that was a kind of a thing about Kawhi too. Like Kawhi, not, you know, we don't like to talk about him too much on this podcast, but he wasn't an offensive threat for the first couple years, and then, but he became like this masterful defender, and not just like on the ball, but we're talking about rotations off the ball. I think that's stuff that DeJounte has in his defensive arsenal, so to speak, and Vassell too. And then one day we all woke up and suddenly like, oh wow, Kawhi is also like just a really good all-around basketball. That's maybe he's an anomaly in that regard. Like I don't know that we'll give Vassell like that, but it's fun to pretend.
I would say Kawhi is a pretty big anomaly. Like
yeah.
I would not count on that development path for really anybody else. Like it's so strange.
Yeah.
I think it's like him and Jimmy Butler, I think, are very anomalous, and I think that the fact that you can point both of them out shows that those are really the only two guys that I can remember. Or Paul George is somewhat similar, but it happened a little bit quicker for him in terms of being able to do stuff on the ball. But Kawhi and Jimmy Butler, it was like 2 or 3 years where they were just all defense, and literally all they did was stand around and shoot the occasional corner three. And then, you know, they added closeouts, and then they added initiating on pick and rolls, and then they added, well, actually, you can't stop me from doing anything. And that is just highly unusual. It doesn't happen for really anybody else. And it's pretty incredible. There are 2 of those guys in the league right now.
Yep.
Jared, you talked about the Spurs needing some depth at the 4. They have a first-round draft pick that hasn't really done a lot in his couple years, by the name of Luka Šamanić. He's had his tendency. He's done really great in the G League, which means that he knows how to play basketball at least, but it has not translated over to his admittedly short stints in the NBA. But curious if you've followed him at all, or if you have any support for Spurs fans that might be ready to jump ship on him, or or anything else on the subject.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I know much of anything about him. I'm looking at his basketball reference right now. He's played 91 minutes in the NBA. I would tell you that I've probably seen 0 of those 91 minutes. So I can't say with any degree of confidence what he is or isn't going to be in the NBA. But I would say that when it comes to identifying mid to late round prospects, I trust the Spurs more than almost any other team in the league. And when it comes to identifying prospects from European leagues, I think I trust the Spurs more than any team. So if they think that he's good and they think that his development is on the right track, I would believe them. But, you know, not everybody contributes right away. A lot of times with them, for young guys, it's you really don't play at all as a rookie. Then you're like in and out of the rotation in your second year, and then you start getting real minutes in your third. He hasn't even been in and out of the rotation yet. Maybe it takes another year for that to happen. But, I mean, they saw enough to pick him, just outside the lottery. So they obviously
saw ahead of Keldon.
What's that?
They took him ahead of Keldon.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, it's always going to be a head scratcher for us, but hey.
Yeah, well, look, Keldon didn't do much of anything last year either until they got into the bubble. And, I mean, in the bubble, he was kind of like I feel like he was like a 2 in the bubble. And now he's like playing the 4, basically. He's a much different player this year, just so much more fearless going to the basket and just so much stronger. And that obviously, you know, allows him to sort of share the big wing position with DeRozan, which has been a big help for them.
Yeah, he went from a nice 2 in the bubble last year to just kind of a bull in a china shop in his second year. He put on like 10 to 15 pounds, I think, and
everybody puts on 10 to 15 pounds in the off season, but he actually did.
Yeah. He looks like he did. Well, Luka Doncic sometimes puts on 15 pounds in the off season, and it looks like all 15 of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey, it's working for him. Yeah, it's fine.
Jared, last question for me. You talked about our young guys. You talked about some of the stuff, but I'm just kind of curious. Put on your Spurs GM hat for just a second. I know you're not entirely familiar with our cap sheet, but what would you do with DeMar DeRozan? Would you sign him? Would you make an attempt to re-sign him and bring him back? Or are you kind of like, hey, he's been a nice player, but let's just move him at the deadline and see what we can get for him and continue on with this rebuild? And I guess if you would sign him, what do you think is a respectable number for him maybe to come back at? And again, this is just ballparking, but just kind of interested in your thoughts for my last question here.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would try to get him to come back on like a 2-year deal or something like that, and just be like, help us see this through to the next era, and continue like doing what you've been doing this. Like if he plays like he did this year, like he's gonna be worth the money, you know?
Yeah.
If you can get him to take a 2-year, $45 million deal, like I think that's pretty solid. The Spurs are not a team that goes out and chases other free agents really anyway. So it's not like they're going to be missing out on much by doing that. Yeah, I mean, I would just make sure that you have an avenue to still get like, you know, a 4 or 5 type or 2 of those type of guys. Because I don't think you can play Poeltl for like 30 plus minutes a game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would be interested in bringing him back for sure. Which is very surprising to me based on what I thought about DeMar 2 years ago.
Yep. All of us.
Yeah. I mean, I love to hear you say that. I've been big on team extend DeMar. Every day that I think that it makes me feel less stupid I got his jersey his first year as a Spur, and I was like, why did I do this, man? Like I'm not a big jersey buyer at all, but I think I really wanted to like fill the void of Kawhi Leonard with DeMar DeRozan, so I was like determined to love him no matter what.
It was a grief buy.
It was, yeah. Awesome. Well, Jared, hey, thanks so much for joining us on the show. And for those listening, if you don't already follow him on Twitter, he's JADubin5. Again, he writes at CBS Sports 538. He has his own newsletter called Last Night in Basketball, which I would highly recommend subscribing to. Anything else you want to plug?
No, that's it. I'll have something up on 538 in a couple days. And enjoy the All-Star break.
Sounds good, man.
Right on.
Thanks for chatting, man.
Don't go to parties, please.
Right on. Yep.
No All-Star parties. Cool. Thanks, Jared.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye.
See you, bud. All right. Thanks for Jared jumping on here, and for anybody wondering how maybe Luka Doncic got some of those extra pounds. He might have very well done it by snagging an avocado bacon burger from Whataburger. Whataburger has their avocado bacon burger out right now. This comes on Texas toast with an extra large beef patty, American cheese, and of course, some good old-fashioned bacon slices and fresh avocado. That is no charge. It's included in the sandwich there, Trace. Of course, you can add your tomatoes and diced onions as well, and then whatever sauce you like. I believe it goes best with the creamy pepper sauce. I like to get mine with a little extra of the sauce because this is one of their top burgers, Trace. So wherever you can, if you're around a Whataburger, go snag your avocado bacon burger today. So Trace, we got a few more minutes here before we wrap up. The Spurs took what seems like 3 months off again to deal with some COVID-19 protocols, health and safety protocols. They also had DeMar DeRozan, who was out after missing a game after the passing of his father. We send our best to him. But Trace, just curious, man, these Spurs came back. They dropped the first game at the buzzer to the Thunder, which totally winnable game, even if they weren't put together in full pieces. And they came out on Saturday night and they won against, oh goodness, I just drew a blank.
They beat
the Pelicans. That's right. They beat the Pelicans. So they came back and split. They basically had a a pretty decent showing, all things considered, with short teams. But this team currently has the 8th best record in the NBA, Trace. They sit 5th in the Western Conference, and they have 0 All-Stars announced on their team. Oh, hiddly doodly do, Trace. What do we? I don't know what that word is, but where do we go from here?
That was like some Bill Land made up word. You just listen.
Holy coyote.
Yeah, holy coyote. The Spurs, listen, man, the Spurs at their best maybe had 1 All-Star a year. The Spurs, when they were like winning 60 games a year, maybe had 1 All-Star on their team. The Spurs not having an All-Star, but having the 5th best record in the Western Conference doesn't concern me as much as it concerns me that they have a losing record against the Southwest Division right now. They are 4-5. They're 4-5 in the 9 games they played against the Southwest. Yeah. And then I had to remind myself that Oklahoma City isn't in this division. Just we've played them and split those games so far. But yeah, I mean, listen, the Spurs have 3 more games. They've got 1 more against the Pelicans and 2 more against Dallas. I think those, though I'm a lot more worried about the Spurs winning those games than I am about them having anyone on the All-Star team.
Right.
While it's not necessarily an indicator of what they're going to do in the playoffs, they've struggled with teams that they should put away.
Yeah.
Not in the Mavericks game. I think they got worked by the Mavericks, who like probably, realistically, the Mavericks probably should be working the Spurs based on who is on their team. I think it's awesome that we have a chance to see the Spurs beat them this season in the standings and in the division. But that Thunder game, just the end that you have the ball with 11 seconds left, and not only do you not get a shot, but you give the opponent the ball with like 7 seconds left. It was a fundamental disaster, I think. I would love to hear what Popovich had to say to his guys in private after that.
Yeah, that was look, you come back from a layoff. I get it. It was a break, super rusty. And then not to mention you come back and you're not at full strength. But as much as we love him, Patty might have had one of his worst, like, I don't want to say his worst games, but his worst batch of bonehead plays in one total game was that thing against Patty. If you remember earlier, I want to say maybe it was like the 3rd quarter, they were down in the shot clock. They had like 2 seconds left and they're inbounding the ball, and the ball comes to Patty and he never shoots it. It's like he just brain farted and just never shot it. And then to get the ball and double dribble like that at the end of the game, honestly, like, DeJounte Murray has to touch the ball to close the game like that. I mean, he is your 2nd best player. He was playing pretty darn good in that game. For him to not even get a touch on it, I mean, I'd have kicked the ball in the stands and gotten a $25,000 fine myself. But also the rotation that from that shot that Dort hit, I mean, that was Patty's rotation too that he missed. So love him. We've sang his praises, but that Oklahoma City game, that was a rough batch of plays there from the Aussie.
Yeah, and Dort that night, he was 6 and 12 overall, 4 from 7 from behind the arc. So to leave him wide open in the corner was just
bold. It's a bold strategy, Cotton.
Pretty unforgivable. And I don't know about you. As soon as I saw that ball go up, I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I don't even think I watched the ball go through the hoop in real time. I think as soon as I shot it, I just did one of these. Oh my gosh. Like it was just like I just looked away because I knew exactly what was gonna happen. So
yeah, it was a frustrating game. I mean, like I know that the Spurs were short in that game, but they had a major lead. I think that was the first game this season where they had a double-digit lead at any point in the game and ended up losing.
Yeah.
So it's first for everything. But I feel like every broadcast up to that point, there you'd hear Sean, "Oh, when they get a double-digit lead, they don't lose." Well, thanks. There you go.
Thanks.
There it is. That was a loss, but it was a really bad end of the 3rd quarter for them, and they just couldn't get away in the 4th. They kept letting Oklahoma City stick around. It's like evidence that DeJounte Murray can't do everything, I guess, is what I will take away from this game. as much as I want to like not read too much into it because of how shorthanded they were, we have to remember they're playing the Thunder, who at their best are shorthanded. So
yeah, it's like, where do we go from here?
But first game back, I don't want to give them a pass. It's not okay to be like losing these games if you want to be
sure
thought of as a team that might get into the second round and maybe at least make life hard for somebody in the second round of the playoffs.
Yeah,
you can't lose games like that.
Yeah, that was a tough one all around. I mean, you just gotta try and chalk it up and move on. They went on and played the Pelicans the following night, and I thought, for all intents and purposes, it looked a little bit like the same type of game, except without so many bonehead decisions throughout. There's still some questionable ones. It also helps to have DeMar DeRozan come back. But we saw a couple
big differences they had.
And we forget that, right? Like DeMar DeRozan is able to get in and close out a ball game for you, which these other guys are not able to do yet. So for the camp that is like really ready to just move on from DeMar DeRozan, look no further than the last 2 minutes of basketball. Go look at the last minute of the game against the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then look at the last minute of the game against the Pelicans, and that should make your case for why we want to continue having DeRozan on this roster. But
on that note, real quick, I think if you have either Keldon or Derek against Oklahoma City, I think they win that game. That's a W.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would venture to say it might be a W if they have Rudy Gay in that thing, because they were we saw Lucas Samanic start next to Jakob Poetl. Then you get Trey Lyles, who, side note, Trey Lyles wants minutes. I don't know if anybody's paying attention, but Trey Lyles is really trying to get minutes right now, and kudos for him because he's making other guys work. But I also really like LaMarcus Aldridge off the bench. I don't like him for $24 million a year, but I was just kind of floating this idea out there. Is like, what scenario are you like paying to bring back LaMarcus Aldridge? And I don't think LaMarcus Aldridge is just like, yeah, I love the Spurs and I'm willing to take a pay cut to come back and play for them. Like, he's probably not. I feel like the guy's ready to go, but it actually was a good role for him. And I love that he's coming off the bench and beating up on some of these other guys. But yeah, outside of Jakob, like Luka didn't play exceptionally well in either game. He had a couple moments here and there. Aldridge, he's 5 for 10 last night. He played 23 minutes. Interestingly enough, LaMarcus Aldridge actually had 5 rebounds, which I think is like more than he had like for like a stretch of like 10 games.
Might be a season high for him.
Might be a season high for him.
You're 6'11" and your season high rebounds is 5.
Yikes. Yeah. We gotta figure out what that exact number is. But he also had a block. Of course, Jakob, I'm looking at Jakob's numbers, and Jakob had 11 boards and 3 blocks. Trey Lyles had 7 rebounds. I mean, so that's going to be the thing, right? I just feel like this season is all about what do you do with Aldridge. Like, that's really where it is.
Yeah, and it's really, we were talking to Jared a little bit about like, does LaMarcus Aldridge have a trade home? Like, no, probably not.
I don't know that he does.
Yeah, and it's
I think Boston is interesting because they have that big trade exception.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it took this long for LaMarcus Aldridge to play with a second unit, because I think if this is the LaMarcus Aldridge that people have been seeing for 2 months, they might have been tricked into like actually making a move for him. But maybe it's not too late. Maybe someone's seeing what LaMarcus is doing right now and thinking, okay, well, we've got a second unit role available for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned Boston. It's hard to imagine how they, even with the exception, how they make that work. But sure, like,
and if they want to. And for some reason, like, the other funny part is like there's a bunch of Miami Heat fans that are like, we want Aldridge, and I'm like, oh. I would say at this point, if you are able to get like Kelly Olynyk for LaMarcus Aldridge, or even Myers Leonard, which I don't know but either one of those guys, like, who would you rather have today, Kelly Olynyk or LaMarcus Aldridge? Like, it's probably long-haired Kelly. Like I mean, I'm not going to be thrilled about it, but it's an upgrade at this point.
It's
so
whelming, I would say. It's not underwhelming. It's not overwhelming.
It's just whelmed. I'm just
whelming.
very whelmed.
Yeah.
I'm just very whelmed. Like that's a good way to put it. What do you think about Luka? How did he look for you? Because man, we're a divided fan base on this guy.
He looked like he tried more on defense than I'd seen him try at any point in the NBA until now. Like we said earlier, he's played 90 total minutes in the NBA. In the last 2 games, I think he's gotten like 40 of those minutes at least.
Yeah.
So I think
most of it in the last 2 games.
I think the last 50 minutes of his career have been markedly improved over his first 40 minutes in his career. He didn't make any shots against New Orleans. He got a few boards. I think he probably got as many boards as LaMarcus. So that's something. I don't.
He did. They both had 5.
I don't know what to say almost, because like it's gotten to the point where like everyone wants something so badly for him, whether it's they want him to fail, which I super don't agree with if you're going to call yourself a Spurs fan, to be right about an argument they made on Twitter 6 months ago, versus like wanting so badly for him to be good, or even claiming that what he's done so far has been good. It's been fine, but like just it's not he against Oklahoma City and New Orleans, he did an okay job against teams that barely have
They're at the bottom of the food chain.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like and this is not me like trying to disrespect Lucas Šimović. Like he doesn't get to control who his opponents are, but like he's not Luka Doncic.
Yeah, 100%. And like I was noticing, like I feel like we got a better look at him in the Oklahoma City game than we did really in the New Orleans game, because they didn't have DeMar, and so they were really thin, and he just had to play.
Yeah. He's a little too thin too. Maybe he should go on the Luka Doncic offseason diet.
I wouldn't be upset with it. He's a good enough athlete where he can like keep pace with guys. Like he can, move his feet pretty well. He can find some spots. He's quick. He can get where he needs to go. But he just missed so many rotations. He was out of position a lot. And I feel like we are so, like, I think you articulated it very well. We have folks who are trying to be right about him for either side. And so we take his mistakes and we just compound them and just blow them out of the water. Like, oh my God, see, this guy's awful. But then we take like his successes. Like he had one possession that was really good. He did an amazing Euro step and finished at the basket. Matter of fact, his first touch that he had in the first quarter, he turned the quarter and went straight to the basket. It was an aggressive attack. And it was just like, oh my God, there he is. This is a sign of things to come. I'm like, he made a right-handed layup going to the right across the lane. Like, I'm not in the NBA, but I could probably get close to that. Like, and so like, it wasn't that impressive of a move. Like it was a nice, strong take, but that's not anything to just wow us over. So the thing is like, he's going to be fine. What is he, like 17 years old? He's 21. He's got plenty of time to like, yeah. But the point is like, he's incredibly young. He's 6'10", 227. Like, let him be. Like, I'm starting to feel bad for him in a weird way, because I'm like, he's so polarized. And I guess the attention has moved off of Lonnie for a little bit and is now like hyper focused on Luka. But I feel like they both kind of have some of that same stuff. Like their athleticism, it warrants them being better than what they are. Like they should be these amazing players. And when they haven't quite gotten it yet, then it's like, well, we're just quick to label them and just throw the baby out with the bathwater, I guess. I think he's been fine. He's a G League player. Yeah. Let him go. Let him be a G League player for us. He's going to get spot minutes in the league. It's fine.
Yeah. I got one last thing to talk about, really, hopefully very quickly. I don't know. Whenever the Spurs have 2 days off, have you noticed this? Weird things start happening on Twitter whenever the Spurs have 2 days off.
Yes.
Even worse when they have like 6 days off. But
like a week.
But between OKC and the New Orleans game, I saw an argument going on from some people on Spurs Twitter about whether or not lettuce belongs on a hamburger.
which was bizarre. I didn't know that was an important moment.
I didn't know this was up for debate. I didn't realize this was a thing that you had to take a side on.
No, it's like, hey, guess what? If you are against lettuce, it's offended you in another life, you don't like the color of it, don't put it on your burger.
Yeah.
Like it's I'm okay with that. It's like the pineapple on pizza thing. Like, of course, pineapple belongs on pizza, but you don't have to eat it that way.
Yeah. I'm with you, by the way. I love pineapple pizza. I'm going to have a slice after I'm done recording this.
Yeah.
As a matter
I'm actually going to, whenever we're done here, I'm going to go over and make a peanut butter and pickle sandwich.
Oh, well, that's a bridge too far, my friend.
Did we cross the line?
Okay. Well, for the record, I'm all about lettuce on a kind of sandwich. Doesn't matter.
Gives it a nice.
I shouldn't say any kind of sandwich, but like I'm not like, you know what I mean. It's fine. It's out there.
I feel you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad we cleared the air on that.
Yeah, especially when I hope we just get unlimited back-to-backs so we can avoid those types of arguments.
Well, actually,
we just play every day for the next like 6 weeks, and then we don't have to worry about nonsense like lettuce arguments.
What there brings me at one quick point that I'm worried about. The Spurs have more back-to-backs in the second half of the season than any other team. They have 11 of them.
It's going to be nuts.
It's going to be hard. They have not proven that they can win on either side of those things so far. So,
and
they got one coming up on Monday and Tuesday.
Tuesday. I know. I feel like we've had a real slow pace of watching Spurs games so far this year. We're going to watch a lot of Spurs basketball in like the next. I don't even. When does the season end? I think they're on the regular timeline. So I think the last batch of games is like coming up. I think it's in April. It might end or something like that. The point is like
they go to mid-May. They extend
mid-May.
Yeah.
Okay. It's gonna be a lot of basketball, man. We're going to see a lot of basketball. So
outside of the All-Star break, there are no more than 1 day off between games for the Spurs. So no more none of these two-day layoffs anymore.
Battle. That's messy.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch at least.
Yeah.
All right. So that's that's all the time we got. The Spurs are 17-12 with 3 games before the All-Star break. Could you imagine the Spurs having possibly 20 wins going into the All-Star break? That's great.
BANANAS bananas.
Steven, always good chatting with you about San Antonio. Everyone watching the show, be sure to rate us, shoot us any questions you have on Twitter. We're happy to talk about it online or on the podcast. And go Spurs, go.
Go Spurs, go.